We call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Woodland Park Planning Commission. It's Thursday, April 10th at 6:30 p.m. Aaron, could you call the roll?
Sure. Vice Chair Larson,
Here.
Don DeZellem,
Present.
Ken Hartsfield,
Here.
Don Hoyne,
Here.
Ken Kennedy,
Here.
Jared Newcomb,
Here.
and Chair Brown.
Here. I want to identify staff and
Oh, sure. Sorry. It's been a long day. In attendance for staff, you have myself, the planning director, Karen Schmink, CJ Gates is in the background in AV. We also have Valerie Lundy from the Board of Adjustment and our consultant, Jennifer Gardner's online with us. Thank you.
Great. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice. So the next item on the agenda is a work session, code review of the last of the fresh and new text. Is that accurate?
Refreshed, yes. Yes, so this evening we have for you a couple of sections, and I do want to note, just clearly acknowledge for the recording that we did publish notice of this work session 2 weeks ago. It showed up in the March 26th Courier. But last week we did not get the agenda posted online, but does say that there's a meeting tonight. There's no agenda behind it. So it's a little bit of gray. It's not as clear and robustly noticed as ideal, but the fact that we're at a work session, I'm willing to risk it. We got to get through this. And it's not like this stuff won't be out in front of the world again at some point. So is it optimal? No, but we're doing it. So it's a little uncomfortable, but that's my thought on where we are. And the recording will be available. So because it's a work session. If it was a public hearing, I'd be squawking a whole other direction and we would be rescheduling. But that's where we are tonight. So just wanted to acknowledge that. So in front of you, we have 3 final sections that we wanted to touch base with you on before we consolidate everything into a clean document. The first part relates to what we call here in Woodland Park zoning development permits. So it addresses that part specifically. The middle part pertains to condominium and townhome subdivisions and what needs to happen around platting those particular developments. And then the final section pertains to grading permits. And grading permits was definitely challenging for us to refresh and put back together here for you all. So we'll talk more about that when we get to it. So with that, Jen's queuing up the document and any comments you guys might have logged in Conveyo. Much of the language within zoning development permits is very consistent with what's already in our code. Apologize that it wasn't a strikeout kind of copy, so you could more, really clearly see that, but it really does align pretty tightly with what's currently in our code. What requires a ZDP, no changes were made to that. So that's what you have in front of you in this particular section. So Jen? We didn't test your mic. I'm not hearing you.
I'm not talking yet. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to adjust. My computer's like overheating, so I was trying to prop it up. All righty, let's dive in. And I'm gonna defer some of these in this first question or this first comment. Larry has some of his initial general comments, but they do address the grading permit section. So Larry, I want to acknowledge that we will get to that. I want to kind of group that together when we get down to that section. So I will hit this first item though, and I might need a little background on this one. Incorporate all references to the newly approved and adopted water availability code requirements for zoning development permits and subdivision plats.
Okay, so the reason you can't address that, Jen, is that is still pending. That is scheduled for
Okay.
public hearing with city council next Thursday. We recognize that that does need to be incorporated, as does any language related to natural medicine businesses. That's also another ordinance that's in front of council next Thursday for public hearing.
Okay,
Well,
great.
because it is relevant to this section of that.
Perfect. Trying to see if I can get this to be a little bit bigger. I've got just not enough space here. Okay, we'll just keep going. I think the rest of these comments, Larry, were related to the grading permits, so we will circle back to this when we get down to that section.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the first comment in the zoning development permits, other than that general comment, was to add a new subsection 2 to read, to establish the applicability, procedure, submittal requirements, and review criteria for the review and issuance of a zoning development permit. So I think what we could just do, Larry, is expand this one, unless you disagree, Karen.
I'll make a comment on the form of this.
Yeah,
Each of the 3 sections, we have new ones today under purpose, all start with something like to ensure development, et cetera. Previous sections, purpose has always said, purpose is the title or the caption, below it says the purpose is to do such and such.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not
That's-
unacceptable this way, but it's not consistent with the rest of the document.
No, and that's the hard part about doing this in pieces like we have been, is we've made decisions previously, we forget what those decisions are, so we end up talking about it, which is why we've had 14 conversations about purpose statements. But we definitely value them, want to get them in there. I do think that's one of the things we'll be cleaning up, you know, in terms of the clean copy that comes forward, is looking to establish more consistency. But to the point here, does the meat of the purpose statement need to be plussed out some? More than likely. So I think that's the big takeaway from this.
okay. Perfect. The next one is a little bit of a departure from what we've been doing. So, and Larry, I noticed you had this comment on all 3 of these sections to add a new subsection and relabel the subsequent subsections accordingly. But the new subsection would read, a completed zoning development permit application, fees and applicable plans shall be submitted. And what
That's
we've been
under-
doing, oh, go ahead, Karen. Did
No,
you have
go ahead.
something?
I'm just trying to make sure
Okay.
where you were, Jen. So
Sorry, right here on this 3. Oh, I highlighted the whole thing. So right under procedure C1 is where this comment is related. So what we've been doing in all the other sections is starting with the zoning development permit submission, or whatever the application name is. So application submission shall adhere to the applicable common review procedures. And then typically down in the submittal requirements, we're adding the completed application and filing fee. And I did realize we missed that application and filing fee in one of the other sections in tonight's set. But so Larry, I'm gonna open this one up to discussion. If we want to add this language, I think we're going to need to add it to all, which is completely fine. I'm kind of wondering if it's repetitive or if it is helpful. So kind of want to open that up to others' opinions.
Well, as we talk about the procedure,
Mm-hmm.
I got to thinking, and maybe that's where I got this when I first did it, was that there's one section that didn't have it. And certainly the ability to say, this is a complete application or this is not. And I think that's very important for staff to have that ability to say, no, your application is not complete yet. We won't process it until it is. So if we
Yeah.
covered under the submittal stage, then I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, perfect. And yes, that is in the 6.02 common review procedures, that completeness review step and requirement.
I'm fine.
Okay, not a problem. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on, item 4 is kind of towards the bottom of the page here. So we're in the procedure and we're speaking to inspection and verification of bedroom and fixture unit count information to verify the accurate bedroom and water fixture unit count may be required. And the comment, oh, sorry, I just lost my place here, is inspection and verification of bedroom and fixture unit count. And then I believe it was to add information to verify the accurate bedroom and water fixture unit count at any time prior to and after issuance of a zoning development permit. So kind of changing that language a little bit.
Well, the thing, it just reads awkward. It just
Okay,
starts off inspection and verification of bedroom and fixture unit count, period,
mm-hmm.
and then jumps in. So the comment was, do we need to make it like a different subsection there with that being the title and then something underneath it, or do we just strike that first sentence and jump right in, information to verify the accurate bedroom and water fixture unit count may be required?
Yeah. I kind of like your rewording and agree with that.
Okay, I need to jump in here. This pertains to water. And the reason we do that in fixture count and literally in inspection is that goes to our tap fees,
Right.
our water fees, all that kind of thing. So this language is exactly what appears in our code now, including the reference to the city manager. And because that was all adopted at the same time as the tap management program that you see in one of the earlier titles of the city code, I did not touch it. And so I worry if we get rid of that first thing, I'm not sure that it is clear about the inspection component.
I don't think anyone's looking to change the meaning of it, but the first sentence is not a sentence, it's a title.
It was
so-
probably a
Yeah.
title of a
Yeah.
section, but it was very, I believe it looks like this.
So we could either
currently.
It does,
make it into a
does look
sentence.
exactly like that. That's how come I said either
Yeah.
break it out and use that as a title and then the information underneath, or we just strike that first sentence and jump into the meat.
I think it could read inspection and verification. Oh, so your comment is sitting right over a period, I think is what you're saying. There's a, yeah,
Well, it's not even
Okay.
really a complete sentence.
So
Right.
Jen,
Yeah,
delete the
I
first sentence, Jen, delete the first sentence.
okay.
And then at the start of the second sentence, it says inspection
Mm-hmm.
and information to verify accurate bedroom. I think that takes care of that.
That's where I was headed to, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, I just was looking at it going, this just is awkward reading.
Question. All right, that saying the, water fixture unit count may be required.
But turn your microphone on, please,
Oh, I'm
Valerie.
sorry. The, sure, Val, the the verification of the third line down, sorry, I'm being stupid. Bedroom and water fixture unit count may be required. And may is like, is it required or isn't it required? It seems ambiguous.
Well, I think it goes with the next phrase, may be required at any time.
That's
So-
pretty general.
Yeah, I think it's just establishing the city's right to inspect, so. They're not compelled, but they have the right to inspect. That's how I read it. Is that how it's intended, Karen?
I
Well-
believe so.
I think it would be better just to make it exactly like what you said, is that it not just say may be required and add those extra words you just used. I think it'll be clearer.
When I read that, I see it as being may. Be required. It'd be required every time you have a water tap that's going to be in conjunction with that zoning development permit. But if there's no water involved, then it's not required. So it's not applicable.
Karen, could you briefly identify for me, what are the other inspection provisions that are available?
I'm not sure, Lee.
Is-
I,
I want to have any such, repeat, in some detail, you can inspect for water taps and bedrooms. Other inspections going on during building? Is that handling the,
There's
that
a whole
hand-
series of construction inspections that'll take place. This is for compliance with the stated fixture count. You say it's
So it's
gonna
a
be
question-
25 and there's actually 28, he might have to pay additional water tap fees.
so is construction inspection and water tap bedroom inspection, that's all?
I think there's separate process.
yeah, we contract with Pikes Peak Regional Building Department for the building itself and does it comply with building code. This really pertains to exactly what you guys are talking about. You told us there were 15 fixtures. We need to double check that before we get you your CO. There, oh wait, there's 20. Or it goes the other way. Oh, no, you bought too many and I believe we refund that balance. I really don't want to mess with this section. I really want to leave it, other than that little change we made to the first line. I recognize it feels weird, but if you look at it from that whole sentence, that fixture unit count, that inspection and count may be required at any time prior to and after issuance of the zoning development permit. So I think it's trying to establish the flexibility of when the inspection can occur.
Why don't you just delete may? 'Cause may sounds like you have a choice, and you really don't have a
I
choice.
think staff has the choice to go out and inspect or not.
Right.
I don't remember what year this was drafted. Literally, it goes back to the TAP management program.
Well, isn't it true
It's
that not all
easy to
zoning
defend
development
it.
permits are for items that have bedrooms and fixture counts? There could be other projects that don't relate to a resident, or is that not true?
A storage shed,
Yep,
a deck.
I'm thinking of
Exactly.
somebody wanting a two horse place garage that they want to put on a property or something. They need a zoning development permit, right?
Yes, they're.
There's no
CDBs are
bathroom, there's
required for
no
all sorts
sink,
of things.
no water,
No bid.
wouldn't be required
Could-
inspection.
I just think it's cleaner instead of saying maybe, you could say is. I mean, if you gotta verify it, you gotta verify it, right?
Okay,
think
we
it
put the
would
word
say-
is instead of may. Does that take care of it?
May seems permissive for the reasons Ken had just mentioned, if for no other reasons that.
Well, if you don't have them, it doesn't apply. I mean, if you have a building that's a shed and it doesn't have any water in it, there's no tap to.
But the
Look at-
inspection would verify.
about we
that it
just-
has water.
Why don't we just take out the word required and just say it may be or may happen at any time prior to and after issuance of the zoning development permit? Just assume that by stating that you have to have a inspection, that's a requirement because we put it in the code. We don't need to say it may be required. We just need to say it may occur at any time prior to and after issuance.
I like the may occur thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
May occur at any time.
Okay, if we're gonna mess with this, what I want, darn it, is inspection and information to verify the accurate bedroom and water fixture unit count is required and may occur at any time prior to and after the issuance of the zoning development permit.
That sounds good.
I would almost suggest that you say as required,
Oh,
because some projects don't require it.
Is required.
Or you can require it and do the inspection and there's no sinks, there's nothing. So yep, you got it right. And we went and checked and your garage did not have any sinks and bedrooms. So perfect.
I think is.
It's
probably
is required, it's
better
fine.
Because I don't want to have to argue with somebody about, we know there's a sink in there and they're not letting us check it.
Gotcha.
That
Yep.
they're
I,
debating.
I'm there. You can inspect it and find that there's none, like they said, and that's a good inspection too. So,
Okay. Think I gathered that.
Well,
I was gonna say something about is required as
hey, after all that, I
applicable,
do
but-
think it's better.
Yeah,
Really do.
okay. All righty. Then let's
Don't
move
mess
on
it up
to,
now, Jen.
I'm not gonna touch it. Moving on.
Goodness.
Item 5, here at the top of the page under submittal requirements. Add new subsection 5 to read, upon review of the application, necessary submittal requirements and review criteria, the planning director shall approve subject to conditions, or deny the zoning development permit. And again, this information is in that 6.02 common review procedures. So we
Yeah, that's
have,
a proce-
we have
You
not
want
been
that, it needs
carrying
to
it
be the
forward.
procedure. Yeah, not a,
I'm sorry, what were you trying to say, Jen? You're kind of quiet on our end.
Am I? I'm sorry about that. I was trying to say that this language is in the common review procedures, and that's why we haven't carried it through all these different sections.
I would prefer it stay in the common review procedures because it is a review criteria. And if you want to put it in this document, it would need to go under review, I
right,
would think.
No, it's part of the procedure, actually. Submittal requirements.
Okay, so the note is located where?
Right here, Karen, in submittal requirements, the suggestion is to add this note upon review of the application
oh, I see.
necessary, that the planning director shall approve subject to conditions, or deny the permit. And that's the language that we have in section 6.02, common review procedures, and then following in the subsequent development review table of the approval authorities. And the more we repeat this language throughout, saying, planning director shall approve, and that approve, deny, and approve with conditions, it can get messy over time, because people may not catch that one section and catch another, and not update accordingly.
Well, as long as it's in the common procedures, I have no problem with just removing it.
Okay. That sounds good. Karen, did you catch up on that, where we were at?
Yeah, no, and I'll say that is my preference, because that's part of where we stumble with the current code, is there's duplicate language all over the place, and then it's just enough off that it conflicts, and which one dictates, and well, this applies to this rabbit hole, this applies to that one, but we're kind of, please, we're trying to get rid of those. So I appreciate wanting to make sure that it's clear, but I think the clarity will be more apparent when we're looking at that consolidated clean document. So.
Awesome. Item 6 is basically the same, speaking to appeals. Add a suggestion to add a new subsection that appeals regarding the decision of the planning director may be made to the Board of Adjustment, and that language is also included in a number of other sections.
Okay. From this point on, I say that several times, and we'll just take those all out.
Okay, perfect. This one was a good catch, Larry. I'm going to go down to the review criteria.
Before you go down there, I have.
Oh, yeah.
3. Just lost you, just moved where it was. Yeah, 3A.
Yes.
If you examine that sentence, you'll find it's really unsatisfactory. It says a permit may be required to submit a performance and maintenance guarantee. Permits don't do, applicants for permits do it. Or you can use the language similar to the existing ordinance, which says a condition or a performance guarantee may be applied to the permit. But the one thing you don't do is say the permit's got to go get a performance guarantee, because it's.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
Get it.
We can reword that.
It's the same way. Should you change should you change may to can or will be?
I think they're gonna reword it more generally too, so.
Need the correct object of what's going to be required to get the.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've talked about, if you
Improve.
use passive constructions, if you don't want to say the city may require a performance guarantee, you can say.
Yep.
The condition of the performance guarantee may be imposed on the permit. There's various ways you can do that.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
it's not always a requirement, but occasionally we do need to utilize that tool.
The condition is the way the current ordinance is written.
Perfect. Thanks for that. You know, while we're at the top of the page, I'm just gonna go through 8 and 12 so that we're not jumping around so much. 8 is a suggestion to add the word use. So it would read, the plan or plat showing the building, structure, or sign in sufficient detail to enable the city staff to verify that the proposed use, construction, reconstruction, or conversion, moving and or alteration is in conformance with the provision of this code. I think it actually is meant to say the construction and reconstruction, not necessarily the use construction, but Karen, do you have a thought on that?
And this is what Larry, from Larry, do you mean the word use, comma, construction, comma, reconstruction or conversion? So I think when you put, I'm fine with use, because that's what
Okay,
we're looking at is verifying what the use is.
As long as it's separated by a comma.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah.
yes, okay,
Exactly.
okay. I've made that note. And then 12 was remove city staff and replace with planning director, and I agree with that. We've been doing that throughout, so. Because the planning director can designate other staff. Okay, then moving down to review criteria. This is the one, item 7, Larry, you're absolutely right. I went back to your original, our original notes on how we're referring to the comprehensive plan, and we do need to update this accordingly. That's basically what 7, 9, 10, and 11 are speaking to.
Exactly. Just to be consistent.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Can I back up just a little bit?
Mhm.
The we were referencing 6.02, and then we referenced 6.001.030. I think we should just reference 6.01 in its entirety because it's 6.030, as I understand it, just the table. And then the table really is a supplement to the full section.
Where are you?
I'm sorry, I went back up
To the
to
previous page?
C1.
Okay,
So I think it should just be 6.02 and the review authority in 6.01 and drop the 0.030.
okay, gotcha. Okay, got that one.
Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Awesome, thank you. All right, that takes us to the next page. I'm just gonna skip ahead to comment 20 so we can finish out the ZDP. So comment 20 was, this was a very good catch, Larry. We rolled this language over from the existing code and did not update this little section that speaks to including but not limited to the zoning, subdivision, mobile homes, basically those codes, and that is all now the Unified Development Code. So we can remove those 3 and update them accordingly.
Thank you.
All right. Now going into item 13. Add a new subsection 3 to address newly approved and adopted water. Okay, so that's again that water
Yep.
stuff that is not quite yet adopted. Perfect. 14. Yeah, I was just gonna, I'm thinking about going 16, 15, 14, just so we can kind of go in order here. So 16 is right here at the applicability. Add new subsection 2 to read to establish the applicable procedure submittal requirement. And I think we talked above that we're not going to do that. This is the one. Oh, let's see. 15, insert new subsection, a completed subdivision application. Again, that's we talked about earlier. We're not going to do that. Sorry, I don't mean to be going too fast, guys. Those were the comments that kind of general comments we made earlier.
Yep.
Now 17, this is the one that you're absolutely correct. we missed the application, completed application and fees as the first item of the submittal requirements. So we'll add that in. And then 14 is back to that same comment about the approval authority that we're going to continue to reference earlier sections.
Correct.
And then same with 18 and 19, speaking to the appeals. And then this was a new one. You had added the note to address the filing and recording, and that is also in 6.02 in the post-adoption procedures. Now that one we could say in the procedure, you know, something to the effect of a third item that record per the post-adoption procedures if you feel that that's important to add in here.
I would need to go back and look at it relative to that code section. And
Okay.
Jen, I want to back up the bus of Scotia.
Yeah,
The comment about submitting the fees.
yes.
And where that goes. Part of the reason that was not spelled out here
Oh,
is because if you look at C1, it says all condominium and townhome plats shall be processed as a final plat per section 6.02. And so that's all spelled out in that particular section. So that's why that was not duplicated here. You know, so this, when it says submittal requirements, in addition to everything that you would do as part of a final plat, these are things specific to either a townhome plat or a condo plat that also need to be part of that application.
Gotcha.
So that was the thinking
Okay.
as to why this might seem a little lean, but it's because these sections have to work together.
good
Let's-
catch, Karen. Thanks for the reminder on that.
What were you gonna say, Larry?
I was just gonna say, let's go back to the suggestion about recording the condo plat, because I don't think
Mhm.
that's a common review procedure, is it?
I said I have to check. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's a common review procedure or if it's something specific to the final plat document. It might appear in that section.
It could be, you're right.
So just,
Yeah.
there's no additional fee that applies here. There's just additional procedures for the townhouse and condominium.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
It's not a fee to the city. But when you go to county recorder, you probably have to pay a fee to get it recorded.
Oh, yeah.
Well, even with regard to the
Yeah, sorry, I jumped back
application,
to the fee.
I
comment. I'm not
don't-
Oh, okay,
recorder-
never mind.
Recording. Sorry about the not being clear.
Okay, here's our 6.02 post-decision action recordation. Upon approval, the following application shall be recorded with the Teller County Clerk and Recorder, and we list final plats and development agreements. So we may need to go back to that section and add condo and townhouse plats. I mean, I know there are a final plat, but there might be an additional document. Karen, what are your thoughts? And we can talk about this offline if needed.
I think, yeah, it probably does need to be plussed out a little bit because quite
Okay.
often with your condo and townhome, there's HOA docs.
Right. Okay.
Did you go
perfect.
back to the part where it says it's processed as a final plat per 6.02 pound?
Oh, you want me to bring that
All
section
common
back
tenant
over?
plats shall be processed as a final plat. Should we be more definitive in our statement there and just say shall follow all the requirements for processing of a final plat plus those items listed here and reference the paragraphs and everything? Say, should we be a little more definitive?
Are you on one under C1 or where?
Yes.
It's just in the same,
Yeah, no.
under
I'm
procedure
trying to
number
get-
1. Just say shall follow all the requirements of a final plat per section 6.02 dot whatever, and adhere common review procedures. And then you got the rest of the notes after that or something.
I do think that's a better way to say what we're trying to accomplish, to more explain it in a little more detail that these sections.
It just
need to
makes
work
them say,
together.
oh, I gotta go look at that final plat thing, because I gotta do all
Mhm.
that. It's a little more definitive to me.
Yeah, I think a reference is good. We don't want to repeat the requirements because then
No.
they could conflict, but a
Just wanna
reference.
make sure
to
they
it,
understand, hey, if you're doing this
That's always helpful.
procedure, first thing, go look at all the final plat stuff. Make sure you do that. then come back here.
It's like we
Take the
do
next step.
one state's taxes and they say, first do all the other states. What if they all said
point.
that?
So we were saying shall follow all required procedures of a final plat and include the condo and townhome?
Not
that
only
kinda how
you
said that?
procedures, but the requirements and
You mean plat, not plan, right?
Yeah. See, Jen, he said that
Okay.
very eloquently, so
I
it was about 7 PM in the recording.
Okay, good. I was gonna type it up, but I didn't want to cover this little spot, so I was, yes, okay.
Plus or minus, it might be a little after, but that tells you where to listen to get the language, because you did,
Okay.
you initially rattled it off. It was like perfect.
Yes, agreed. Okay, we will listen to the recording on that one. Okay, where are we now?
Karen,
So we,
Hang on, Jen.
21.
Hang on, Jen. Yes, Lee?
conditional use permits for, it's for the townhome only, but not for condominium.
Hang on. So we're talking about C2.
Description seems to be discussing both townhomes and condominiums. Townhome shall have to get a conditional use permit. Is it somewhere else here that, if it's somewhere else, it should probably be here, because this applies to both sections.
Yeah, no, and when you think through the sequence of how the projects happen, they potentially happen in a slightly different cadence because condominium plats, they really are coming back and looking at airspace units, and condos a lot of times are stacked sideways, a little bit of both. So
Yeah,
They
this
would have
doesn't say,
had-
it just doesn't say when, it's just, but it
they would have had.
implies there's no conditional use permit for the.
Well, in order to get to that configuration of multifamily or multi-dwelling attached units, they would have had to gotten a conditional use permit to even get to that configuration. And then to be able to sell those airspace units individually, it's after the construction's already started. But we can plus that out a little bit, because townhomes, that's the one that's a little trickier, that sometimes, you know, they want to do just the 2 dwellings on one lot and then come back later and say, no, I want to split them apart. And yeah, it's just, it's an awkward process in Woodland Park.
it'll be better soon.
I'm sorry, Larry, what?
It will be better soon.
so are we okay with this statement then after that description?
I think it probably wouldn't hurt to somehow in item 3, and I don't know what order they need to go in, since we were trying to be consistent about what order townhomes versus condos showed up. But to also just address that multi-dwelling attached, you know, having previously obtained or is still subject to conditional use permits.
Okay,
Conditional use permit.
Conditional use permit.
oh, thank you guys. I thought I typed in conditional, but I must have skipped right over it. Okay. All right. So 14, we've addressed 18, 19, 17. Okay, so now we're on to number 21.
I don't get that one.
Add following words supplemental information.
Yeah, where?
Oh, are you saying, Larry, both townhome and condo plats shall be accompanied by the following supplemental information?
Yes, because that's what
Okay.
we're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay, I was trying to figure that one out.
I think that actually reads just fine with that addition.
With those words.
Yeah. Okay, I had a question mark on this next one. It's again the water availability, so we know that one is still under review. All right, 23, I believe, is on the next page. Okay, this one, there were a couple comments on this, and I'm just gonna give a little overview. Your current code in the submittal requirements breaks out, in addition to the requirements for preparation of a final plat, condominium plats shall contain the following, and lists those. And then, after all of those signature blocks, there's another section that looks very similar, but it's for the townhouse plats or townhome plats. So there is a repetition between the location. Some of these elements are repeated down in the townhome plats. We did try to compress those. In the end, we decided to break them out so that we could have all of the condo plat regulations or submittal requirements together, and then all the townhome plat requirements together.
So that
So,
is the gist of a later comment I made, but this comment was above, it said that both have to submit and go to, what is,
oh, I see,
D1A.
D1A,
right there?
back up here. Okay,
So building footprint showing dimensions of each unit in relationship to the lot and property lines. To me, sounded like the same thing as, scroll back down to where the comment is. Sounded to me the same as location of the building in reference to the exterior boundaries of the property. So it sounds like we
Okay.
already asked for that. We're asking for the same thing twice now.
let's look at that again. So building footprint showing the dimensions of each unit and building in relationship to the lots and or properties.
I couldn't tell the difference between those two statements.
Yeah, it does kind of seem the
Is
same.
there a subtlety I'm missing?
There potentially is, because on a townhome plat, each dwelling unit is, they're all side by side, and they typically run a property line down the common wall. So each unit ends up with distinct land area associated with it.
Mhm.
And so that's a little different than like the overall boundaries of the parcel. So like with a condo plat, a lot of times it's a building in the center of a larger parcel that then has floors and other units. I don't mind the duplication. In this situation, I think we're okay.
Okay, is that the final decision?
Nobody's arguing,
Yes.
so I think it is.
Okay,
I don't think it's any different. I think it's probably a duplicate, but no harm, no foul.
As long as we don't require two separate these documents to show the same thing twice.
No, I hear you there.
all right. Okay, Karen, this one's for you.
Okay.
25. Because, well, there's some history on this, but that's, Karen will understand why I'm tossing this to her. The question is, limited and general common elements, where is this defined or described?
To the best of my knowledge, those are real estate terms. Because I've actually seen them appear on other plats. So an example of like a general common element would be a playground in the center of a variety of buildings that that's a feature for all of the residents. A limited element would be the ground floor unit has a little patio out their back door. That there's a little area defined related to that patio that is assigned to that particular unit. So it's a limited element versus the general one that's open to everybody.
Since that's.
Well, but I really don't care what it is, just if I was trying to interpret this, how would I gain that knowledge? Can we reference?
I would Google it.
Well, and do you really mean for it to only apply to condominiums?
That's typically where it shows up.
Cause a townhouse community could have. a General common element of a playground thing or something.
So would it show up in some sort of real estate or state or
I-
professional?
Well, I just looked up limited common element. I'm not sure where Pullman and Comley is or what state this applies to. But they're referencing whatever entity their Common Interest Ownership Act. And in that particular area, they define a limited common element as a portion of the common elements allocated for the exclusive use of one or more, but fewer than all of the units. I don't know what shows up in the Colorado revised statutes, if those things are defined. And those terms were in our current regs, weren't they, Jen?
They are in your current regs. They're not in your definitions, and this is the only section that they are referenced in. So we could put them in the definition section if we wanted to define them, or sometimes what we do in code is, if it's only in one individual section, we can say common elements, let's say limited common elements as used herein shall mean, and then a quick description.
That's what instead of
Or a
the
reference.
definition.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is check statute.
Okay,
Just
we
to
can
see.
check statute, yeah, and I've come up with a couple of definitions here that general elements are shared by all unit owners, not assigned to a specific unit. Limited elements are common elements that are designated for the exclusive use of specific units, but still legally owned and possibly maintained by the HOA.
Sounds like it gets you in a lot of trouble. Just,
So they really are terms specific to how that condominium ownership group functions and regulates and looks at things. And
Mhm.
it would be more of a concern from their homeowner association documents in terms of literally who's maintaining what, who has rights to use what. So that's where that really plays out more than anything else.
well, if it's in the HOA, does it have to be here? I mean.
We want it needs to be shown on the document. So that's the point here. This is part of the list of what gets shown on that condo plat.
It appears that the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act governs and defines these terms.
Okay.
So CCIOA,
Can you say that again? The Colorado,
Common Interest Ownership Act.
Does it give you a CRS citation?
I haven't found one yet, but I'll look.
okay,
that's what-
Yeah, check, just, I haven't referenced it, but just start here, 38-33.3-208. That's
Yeah.
probably the right one.
Yeah, Colorado Revised Statute
Yes,
38-33.3-208.
There you go. Just say
Okay.
as defined in, and then we're good.
Yeah.
I like that.
But if you just have a citation, would a common person know what that meant?
Well, they will now.
We've made other references to Colorado Revised Statutes in
Well, that's
these
true.
regulations, so.
I guess I would feel more comfortable if we just gave it a brief definition right here in the citation.
The nice thing about doing a reference is A, it's authoritative, and B, if it changes, then we automatically.
I would,
adopt the
I would
change.
lean the other way, Larry, in that anybody applying for this particular type of permit probably has more knowledge about those particular terms than the average person.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
I don't expect it to,
Okay. Makes sense.
All right, so
Be a few confused by the reference.
Yeah, do the CRS thing.
All right. That was a good conversation. Thanks, guys.
So
Let
so
me-
this is where I'm commenting on, we've got a set of things to do if it's one or the other, and then a
Right.
separate list if it's one, and then a different list if it's the other. Just,
while he's making that comment, I want to make mine too. It seems like there's variation between condominium and townhomes, quite a few. Will they continue to become more varied? Should we maybe just say condominiums and townhomes at the top and then say condominiums? Just focus on that. And then the next section, townhomes,
we can totally,
focus on that.
we can totally split it apart into two distinct things.
It might be clear for the user.
It currently appears together in our regs now. So that's where we stayed. And like Jen said, there was an attempt to try and further blend them together. That went south really fast. We had to abandon that. So that's why you see it's split out. So there's some basics up front that are common to both of them. And then you're into the technicalities of what happens with those plats. That's really where the difference is a little bit different information shows up on them. The statements or the signature blocks are a little bit different. So there's not a lot of variability, but it might look like
But to
enough.
get to what I want for my townhome information, I'm having to read through all the condominium information,
because C
throw
becomes
that
the
out and get to the
14.
townhome, get to the townhome. No, I'm back in condominium. That is a little confusing to me,
Okay.
maybe. Just a suggestion. I don't know that
Split it
you
up.
want to make that kind of change.
It's just a lot, assuming we done without too much increase in verbiage, because a lot of the things may be the same. So be right, and if you follow similar organization, you pull them apart, you're gonna have to repeat again, but if it's not too much writing, it seems clearer as. what you're
Yeah, I
saying.
mean, in fact, it's all cut and paste now. It's pretty simple, but then you're in condominium, you can look at all your stuff. You're done. You're not confused. You're not jumping back and forth. If you're a townhome, you look at all your stuff. It should all be there, even if it's duplicate,
Jen, let's just pull it apart and
as
I-
a more clear way to present it to the user. I'm thinking, because you just got to
Yeah,
make the definition of
and
what's a
I'm-
condo and what's a townhome at the beginning. Say, if you're doing this one, jump down to townhome.
A little-
I don't think it's gonna add much, actually. I think if anything, most of this can just literally split in half. And then it's just this one section, about a half a page that'll get repeated.
I
Everything
don't think
else
we're
is
gonna add a
unique.
lot. Because we.
No, I think
already-
it's pretty, yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty simple.
As far as the users, I think Ken is correct in that we have a separate, might be some duplicate verbiage, but it certainly makes it more streamlined
Mhm.
what you need to do.
I think
for
that makes,
that type of-
Okay.
I think that makes it unanimous.
Would just
to
make
split
it
them out.
easy.
okay. let's pull it
Perfect.
apart. And Jared's quietly online out there, so yeah, he's nodding up and down, so, okay. You don't Leave him out.
All right, I've captured that. We'll separate those two sections. I think that will fix a lot of,
That totally answers my concern. Yep.
yeah. Okay, I'm just looking through here. I think that actually addresses most of those comments. 29. Oh, yep, this is that reference to the comprehensive plan again. Subdivision, relabel subsequent subsections accordingly and add the consistency with the intent of the city comprehensive plan. Karen, I guess I have a question about that. Since that is in the no, I think that should be here. Because I think you and I talked about this previously, they're processing these as a final plat, but the final plat is referencing the preliminary plat criteria, which is primarily what we've pulled forward here. So I do think we need to reference the comprehensive plan. If you follow that.
We've sprinkled that comprehensive plan requirement throughout just about every single application type. I think it's fine to keep it here. And when you're writing the staff report, it may be, this is consistent with a prior application. And at that time, it was found to be X, in compliance. So, yeah, thank God for saving things that it's easy to pull things from prior staff reports.
So that's another search and replace all, because whenever we reference the
Yes.
comprehensive plan, we settled on a set of language. I don't know if you went back and pulled the exact same language or whether this might be slightly different.
Yeah, this language that Larry has here is what we settled on.
Okay.
Perfect. So moving down to 30 and 31. So 30 is the statement of conformance is slightly different from the one in paragraph E2.
Yeah, it was just the wording that was kind of weird.
Yeah,
Larry's suggestion to go to uniform development code is better. And that
Okay.
replaces, and that takes care of my comment.
Yes, you're right. These are the same comment. Thank you. Okay. So yes. Be below. All right. That moves us into, let's do 33 and 35 because they're still in this condo townhome plat. 33 is a suggestion to add a new statement. The applicant has provided a detailed, hold on, let me see where this is, Larry. So you're saying we're in review criteria. And you're just saying another review criteria is that the applicant has provided a detailed, verifiable, and authenticated documentation of the availability to connect a water source that is sufficient and adequate to serve the needs of the proposed lots, uses, and
That's-
structures.
That's from that water ordinance
Yep.
again.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we'll probably incorporate that more generally, but, or what's the thought?
Okay,
I don't
Haven't
know,
got that far yet.
because, you know, right now it's being specifically added to all kinds of applications. That's the whole point of that ordinance that you guys recommended to city council.
Right.
So it will probably be pulled out and added to these lists of criteria for all these different review applications. Just as you see, the one above it, the applicant can document the provision of public services, including utilities generally. You see that under conditional use permits, special use
Right.
permits, so I do think it's gonna get sprinkled. The new water ordinance will get sprinkled throughout the UDC as well.
You're gonna get a tap for that?
Yeah.
You
There's
need
a
tap in
charge,
this paragraph for water usage.
Mm.
so.
Only if it's sprinkled.
that was good. I can't wait to see it.
Well, and I didn't want to send that to you, Jen, just in case there's like some other tweak to language that happens through
Sure.
the final stage of the hearing process. It's easier to incorporate the decision once as opposed to trying to remember where it is and editing again.
I agree with that, so no problem. 35, the applicant. So it reads right now, the applicant can document the provision of public services included, but not limited to water, sanitary sewer, storm drainage, electricity, and communication facilities.
Mm.
And the proposal is to change that to a must. The applicant must document.
Or is there a
shall.
missing end of that sentence to say they can document it in some way or in some form or some fashion? It's kind of an incomplete thought. If it's can, there's like, it's begging some more description, can in what way?
Some says.
And if it's, and if it's just a shall, then it's.
Okay, so what I would
rather
like to
can.
What I would like to do here, because I know this shows up very similarly in other places. I think we've already settled on more optimal language. I'd like to just copy that
Sure.
over into this location. Rather than work on this and have it be different
Right.
than something else.
Just curious, was the intent that they shall, must, or was the intent to give them an option of how to present the data?
I don't know what the intent
Okay.
was, but I know we've decided this before. And
All right.
we've got a criteria that we can cut and paste into here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a side note real quick, because when you guys have looked at applications for conditional use permits, you know, that we bring to you, that there's the whole list of approval criteria for a conditional use permit. And then there's a list of stuff related to the site plan, and they're like enough off from one another. It's a little crazy in terms of how that's written and pulled together, and we're making findings to both, and it's duplicate findings, and it's just so anyhow, by us building that consistency in through these different sections, I think that will be helpful when we're reviewing applications, when the applicant's putting together a proposal, those kind of things, so.
When you were, the condominium section, the additional review criteria, and then the townhouse additional review criteria, since you split the condo and the townhouse earlier, should you split that part of it into the condo?
Yeah, we'll make sure that any review criteria that applies to both types shows up in each set. And then the stuff specific to that particular application type will also show up.
Okay.
That's a good cleansing.
Yes.
When we look at all the review criteria for all the applications. If we want to see what the impact for the utilities are, let's have a language. So sprinkling it all different.
Yeah, it's not snowflakes. I don't need them to be different. Uniform would be good.
All right. You guys are coming up with all kinds of little puns tonight.
I know, it's been a long week.
All right. Okay, that concludes our condo and townhome plats. Are there any other comments in there? I think we've addressed everything pretty well. Okay,
Nobody's saying anything, so.
perfect. Moving
All
on to
right.
grading permits.
Yeah, before you dive in.
Yes.
Grading permits. This was definitely a very challenging section to dissect, analyze, recompile, sort. No, seriously, it was very, very challenging because in our current regulations, there's a section that talks about erosion and sedimentation control plans. And then there's a section that talks about grading permits. And when you read through erosion and sedimentation control, well, both sections, talk about different land areas. Some are, and they did not use the language consistently in terms of what was the break point around 7,500 square feet. Was it more? Was it less? Was it equal to? And it was a little bit of all of the above. It was not at all consistent. And then under erosion and sedimentation, it buried down under there, it says, you get a grading permit to do this plan. So at the end of the day, when you're going through the analysis and such, made the determination that it's all grading permits. It's a matter of what type of grading permit, what does it apply to? And then what are the differences around what you need to submit for that type of application? So that's what was brought to you all, was really analyzing what is the metrics, the intent, what's going on, and then really rewriting this section to try and make that considerably more clear in terms of how this gets processed. So we'll dive in and see if we accomplish that. I mean, I don't know, I'm in the dark. Jen's at least read the comments.
I don't want to jinx it, but you could have fooled me. I mean, it read very logically, so
Okay,
I had no trouble following it.
that means a lot because no, this was like hours of time trying to figure out what to do with this. I mean, hours, days worth of hours.
Well, I agree with what Don said. You made a very complicated section in our existing code and simplified and clarified.
Well, and this is one of those sections, quite honestly, when the applicant's coming in, when we don't understand it to explain it,
Yeah,
how do you defend that to the customer? And this is critical stuff, since this really goes to sedimentation, erosion, things that go into our surface waters that end up in drinking water. No, this is very important section of the code. And the fact that it was so muddy, it was it was very challenging. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I had to throw that one.
Oh my goodness. No.
So I'm glad to hear that it seemed logical to you guys. So that's really good news. So, okay, Jen.
Yeah.
before you
Well,
go
I'm
to
gonna-
Jen,
Oops, hang
I
on.
was
Well,
gonna
you
say, I'm
wanna
gonna
go
turn
back
it
to
over
what
to
you wanted?
Larry.
thank you.
Yes. Larry, do you want to describe what you
I can
wrote in
address
here?
this.
I'm sorry, where are we?
Yeah, Larry, can you address your general comments? I could read them out, but I
Yeah.
think it might have more impact if it comes from you.
Okay. Let me scroll down if I can.
It was at the very top of the comments, number 2. Or I could read it if you want me to.
No, I'll do it. I'm just pulling it up.
Because Larry had some history built into this that I think if he could
Oh,
explain
nice.
it in his words, that might help.
Okay.
You know what?
Do you want Jen to make her screen bigger so you can read it? from
Yeah, do you want me to just
Yeah.
make this bigger?
Like a lot bigger.
Okay, here's what we have to do. We're gonna make this whole column bigger.
Okay,
Can you see that now?
yep, I can.
Okay,
Thank you. For your information, grading permits are currently addressed under two existing Title 18 zoning chapters. Chapter 18.4 soil erosion settlement and Chapter 1841 grading regulations. Under the proposed Uniform Development Code, they are proposed to be incorporated into three new sections. Section 6, administrative subsection 6.03 pound rain permits and Chapter 3 development standards. Sections 301, 3.01.03 soil erosion and sedimentation, and 3.01.04 grading regulations. First, in my opinion, grading permits and soil erosion and sedimentation provisions should not be addressed in either zoning or uniform development code provisions, but rather to city zoning, city engineering specifications. Second, since 1997, the city has determined that it is best to address these two subjects in the zoning code. To remove them from the proposed UDC now and incorporate them into the city engineering specification standards would be a major undertaking and beyond the scope of this project. In a nutshell, why is it in the Uniform Development Code? Shouldn't it be an engineering specification?
You know, I think Jen and I had that comment, or a conversation, and I don't know what was going on in 1997. I was in Mesa County.
I wasn't here either.
Yeah, so I can't speak to that, but, you know, the objective behind the regulations is very clear, very important. Definitely needs to stay. And to your point, Larry, to get them put into the engineering specs is a very large undertaking. So the objective now is, yes, we'll put them here, we'll keep them here. And at some point, when the engineering specs potentially get revamped, it's easy enough to come back and do, as part of that process, a code amendment to delete them from this location.
Yeah.
But you would just delete the standards and keep the process here, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
for now.
and we do recognize that, you know, you guys already looked at Chapter 3 in the new structure where the standards have been relocated. There's some things that landed there. There was were actually process related, and they've been incorporated into this Section 6. So in your clean copy, there will be some other cleanup that happens there. It will not be the standards in terms of what needs to happen, but if the language was really more process or submittal requirement, it shows up in the appropriate section.
That being said, let's move on.
all
Okay.
right. Take it away, Jen. Okay, so I want to actually address, you had it here. I think it's up here. Your first comment, the first comment in here is to add a new subsection 2 under the purpose to read, to establish the applicability procedure, submittal requirements, and review criteria for the review and issuance of grading permits. And we have had language similar to that in others, so I'm fine adding that in, Karen, and I think that went to an earlier comment we had tonight.
Which one is that, Jen? I'm sorry.
To add under the purpose, so the first purpose is to regulate permitting of land disturbing
Uh-huh.
activities, but then to add establish applicability, procedure, and submittal requirements and review criteria for the issuance of grading permits. I think we
Well,
had a
and-
comment earlier that tonight. Let me see how we address that one.
I think that's where we look at all of our purpose statements and clean
Exactly,
them up for consistency.
right. And that's, I think, what we said above too, so. Okay.
Do you need the and review criteria for the review and issuance? I mean, is there review, do you need review in there a second time?
Review criteria is a specific title that we're using in this.
Right, that.
Oh,
one I get,
for
but then
the,
say
oh, I see,
review
for
and-
the,
Do you need
yeah,
that?
It's just a section of the,
It's just, it's repetitive to what the couple
for
words,
the issuance of, maybe,
yeah.
trying to strike that
It-
there. If I take that out, then that kind of shows what you're saying. For the issuance of grading permits. Okay, we can consider that when we're revising all of this. This comment is, and I think this goes to what Karen was saying a few minutes ago. There is a section on purpose and objectives in your current code, section 18.41.010. We do have that in chapter 3. I have chapter 3 open here, so I can show you what that language is. It's this purpose and objectives under the grading regulations. Karen and I did talk about this and decided that they probably belong better here in the grading regulations because they're speaking to why we want to enforce these grading regulations. But as Karen said, also there is some stuff that might move back and forth a little bit in these sections from the original draft that you saw.
okay.
Perfect.
And that was language you guys had already blessed off on, so.
Yep.
So not retread old ground.
All right, then, let's see, number 36 was the general comments that we just discussed. Number 37. Question, are grading permits not required for any land disturbing activity of areas of 7,500 square feet or less? And that kind of ties to the next question. Karen, I'm gonna toss that one to you. I know we worked really hard on trying to clarify this section.
Yeah, this is, this was part of the brain damaging things, because when you, look at the permit types and what's required under the different types for submittal, the type A is oriented towards, like subdivision, development, commercial activity, and requires both the erosion and sedimentation control, and then the grading plan. And this is where all the words sound the same, but there's important distinctions. So grading plan prepared by registered professionals. And then the type B was single household dwellings on lots that fall greater than 7,500, but less than that acre. That you still need, if I'm doing this from memory, so you still need the grading plan.
I just
You
coached down
don't-
to that section, Karen, if that helps you.
You don't need the registered professionals to prepare it, which drives us a little crazy at a staff level. Because you get all kinds of interesting submittals then. But it's our assessment, and we're speculating, that based on the way this is written, they were carving that out for a reason. One is, it's a single house. Don't be mean to the developers. This was no, seriously, this was a way to support the development community, to not require that additional registered professional to prepare these. But it was, based on that size. So when you're at 7,500 square feet, I believe is the lot size that you see in urban residential, suburban residential. So that's a pretty typical lot size. So if you're doing that smaller lot, single house development, yeah, you don't need these full-blown grading and erosion and sedimentation control plans, but you do need that zoning development permit. So in the language at the beginning under ZDPs, it talks about land disturbing activity greater than 1,500 square feet. This was an aha I had last week that, I'm not sure where, but in this section, we probably do need to add a statement that addresses that specifically, that for land disturbing activities, under 7,500 or greater than 1,500 and under this, reference section blah, blah, blah for zoning development permits. Was my thought, to make sure that you still need permits. There's different things that you submit. And then the other piece, I'm sure there's concern. It's like, well, if this is so important, how do we ensure that we don't have runoff and sedimentation issues and such when something is under construction? So those smaller things that only require that zoning development permit, we have a list of conditions we attach to those all the time. And typically, what happens in process is before they start work on their project, they do a pre-construction meeting with our city inspector out on site. So it's actually a great way to work with that property owner and kick dirt with them and go, oh, look, as you start doing this, you're gonna have a problem. This is gonna go sliding down the hill. This is where you gotta get some wattles in. So it's more field fitted for what's going on site. So we're trying to accomplish these same goals with less paperwork, which I believe the developers would really push back if we tried to change that, because in terms of material changes, it would be lovely to require anybody doing that new house to do that full on grading plan by the registered professional, especially since we've got so many hillside lots, those kind of things. But I don't think we can get it done. And you want to talk about a substantive change, that counts. So that's a lot of the reason we did not try to even broach that. So I think it's covered. This was to clarify the difference between these different types of permits and what's required with the submittals. So hopefully I got to your question.
Kind of.
Okay. What was the question, sir?
You started out by saying this needs a little bit more clarification.
Uh-huh.
So I think and what you explained needs to, how you need to clarify it.
Okay.
And use the exemption section that follows. That may be a good point to kind of tie those two things together. But there seems to be a big gap. If you have less than 7,500 square feet, you don't need a grading plan. The way I read it.
Yeah, no, that's the language that we need in there in terms of steering people back to the zoning development permits generally.
That and it needs to be clarified.
Okay. Great. I have added a note in here, Karen, based on your ZDP for those that are 7,500 square feet or less. We can work together to craft some of that language.
Okay.
So then that goes to the next comment, which is, I think that's basically the same comment, Larry, isn't it? That if they're not required for land disturbing activities for areas of less than 7,500 square feet, then we need to add that to the exclusions.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of going what's applicable and what's exempted.
Okay,
And
perfect.
clear.
Just clarify that a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. We did have a review note in here that said we need to clarify how other residential types are being classified, because we had the type A, B, and C that Karen was just talking about a few minutes ago. And it does not cover multi-household, single household attached and duplex. So, Karen, I can't remember if we needed feedback on that or if that's something that how we need to address that, if that needs to be addressed tonight or if that's something down the road.
I think it was more FYI that we see the whole.
Okay,
You guys are seeing good at seeing holes too, because I can see the argument related to my apartment building. Well, that's not commercial and it doesn't fit in these categories. I don't have to do this. Yeah, but your land disturbing activity is X, so, where does that get plugged in? To plus that out, to kind of cover some of those other bases. So that's what that review note was about.
perfect. There's a comment, is there a time limit on the stockpiling of materials? I thought that was a good question. Karen, we don't have a time limit in the code that I'm aware of. Is there anything else that any other documentation that you guys use for that?
Where is that comment sitting?
I'm trying to find it now. Oh, here it is. It's under the exclusions, and one of the exclusions is stockpiling of raw or processed sandstone or gravel. Right, kind of where I'm hovering here.
There's some words missing in that sentence.
No, I guarantee you there is not.
Well,
Well,
it's just.
but when they wrote it originally, probably, but in terms of what got transferred over, it's what that was there. It's sort of.
It's not finished. It's not a complete thought.
Well, but it comes under the,
It comes under this exclusion, so it's the following activities are excluded. The stockpiling of raw or processed sand.
Jen, I would need to check the use table, but I believe that there's other permits required around processing, especially of materials, storage
Mhm.
yards, that kind of thing.
Site greater than 7,500.
Sorry, there's another conversation going on. So my thought is it would be done concurrently or as part of a different permit.
Okay,
And then why, I said, I don't know where they got some of this stuff from, because, what was it, like logging operations, that's like a Pacific Northwest thing, we're not exactly known for that.
at least not within the city limits,
What's that?
at least not within the city
Within
limits.
city limits.
Just south,
Yeah.
we got a log
Yeah.
stockpile by, sand and gravel. They use that land for harvesting logs and assembling
But in the city-
truckloads, just outside the city, so,
it doesn't count.
okay. But in the region there.
Oh, yeah,
Before you
sure.
move on,
Okay,
I don't want to
On that log in particular.
I don't,
Oh. Not too many trees.
excuse me.
Type type B grading permits requiring erosion sedimentation control plan. And the grading plan for the following type projects. Here, talks about single family detached residential building site greater than 7,500 feet, but less than 1 acre.
uh-huh,
Every place else we talk about land disturbed area. This is the building site. Is that what that means, or does it mean
Mm,
lot site?
that's language that was there that I didn't clean up.
Which is it?
Probably should be the area disturbed. Yeah,
At least if the 7,500 measure, that's land disturbed. The 1 acre sounds like a lot size. Yeah. But the 7,500 feet sounds like a disturbance area.
it probably should be.
okay,
Yeah, that's a good catch. Like I said, I was just focused on 7,500 and what side of that we were causing the break point to happen, because that was all over the place between the
It
different
came to mind when
things.
you mentioned some of our lots are 7,500 feet, and I was thinking, well, is that,
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, with this whole section, I do have some folks on staff here doing another review. I wasn't able to get them to look through it before we brought this to you. So that the end users, my folks that are actually working with the contractors, issuing the permits, doing the on-site inspections. I wanted them to read through this since this was such a significant restructuring, to make sure that and Kip, the utility director, make sure that this did have that desired degree of clarity around what it is we're trying to accomplish. So there may be some other tweaks that come in from those guys as well, but I appreciate catching that land disturbing activity under B1.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. This next comment is down at the bottom of this page under procedure for grading permits. And it's that same comment referring to the approval upon review of an application, necessary submittal requirements and review criteria. The planning director shall approve, ... And we had decided earlier not to include that language. 42 under procedure.
Already addressed it.
Yep, already addressed. Thank you, Larry.
Same thing with 43.
Perfect. Oh, and then this one, I think Karen kind of addressed this earlier. Comment 44 is, let's see, under submittal requirements, a completed application and filing fee, and then erosion control plan. There is some in your current code, erosion control plan and soil erosion and sedimentation plan, which we're using those terminology interchangeably. We have changed that all to erosion control plan moving forward. That is the industry standard. Unless others feel that we need to change that back to soil
Okay.
erosion and sedimentation.
Okay, yeah, because sedimentation is a net effect of a bad erosion. And so I don't know if you heard Larry's point to scrub for that one more time, the sedimentation,
Okay.
for the terminology
Perfect.
to get to that current standard.
Sorry, I just want to make a note about that. All right.
Excuse
Oh,
me,
hang on.
excuse me, Jen, I just got
Yep.
thought of something. A lot of times in our staff reports, we'll talk about best management procedures.
Best management practices.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
dealing primarily with drainage, isn't it?
BMPs, it kind of intertwines, because that's, whether it's a silt fence, is it wattles, what's the tool that you're using to avoid having sedimentation and runoff off your site. So I believe that's what that is when it gets referred to as BMPs. And that's what you see us attach very typically at that pre-construction meeting, is what are those BMPs that are implemented? And that's what gets inspected fairly regularly by the city inspector to make sure that those are still holding up and the site isn't running down the street.
Is there any state statutes to deal with that?
I don't know. This is different turf for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Enough said.
yeah. Which is part of the reason I've got other folks on board taking a peek at this.
All right. Along those lines of the conversation you were just having, there's a comment in here. Erosion control plans are usually a part of the civil drawings for a project, which is true. Do engineering drawings equate to civil engineering drawings? That could, yes. So we could change that. Where is that comment? Right here. Contain architectural and engineering drawings. So it reads now, the erosion control plan shall contain architectural and engineering drawings, maps, assumptions, calculations. And I believe, Ken, where you're headed with that is to add that maybe it's civil engineering drawings rather than just engineering. Is that correct?
No, I was just, you
Or
said
you're just
architectural and engineering drawings. I didn't know what you meant by engineering drawings. We do architectural, civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Covers them all.
All these drawings, but they're all engineers sign off on the drawings.
Or an architect.
Right.
Civil drawings is
Or
where these
architect-
things typically exist.
Mhm.
You don't reference that. So do we want to add architectural, civil and engineering drawings? Or do we want to say architectural or just civil drawings. I mean, architectural shows where the buildings are and the buildings sizes and details, but civils where grading plans, erosion sediment control details and plans are, paving plans, all that stuff.
Or, and I'm not arguing for or against, just clarity, does it refer to as drawings made by an architect versus drawings made by an engineer? Which is it trying to distinguish, do we know?
That could be.
Engineering More generic, I would have thought it is, but maybe not.
Well, architectural and engineering covers it all.
So this,
I mean,
I pulled this paragraph out of our current stuff. So this is what we currently got.
actually, his may be more to what it is, the engineered drawings and the architectural.
Yeah.
But
drawings.
remember, we also have these weird, not always requiring the registered professional to prepare something, that there are instances where architects are trying to do erosion control plans for the project instead of hiring the engineer. Drives us crazy. Yeah,
If
just
it's
seriously,
engineering drawings, I assume needs an engineer. Is that right?
that's what I would assume when I read it.
The architect doesn't usually do the electrical and the plumbing. It's an engineer that does those.
And the civil is a
Typically.
specific subset or discipline of engineering in general, since.
Basically, the architecture drawings show what it looks like.
Yeah.
The engineering
It's
tells how it works.
And some of this does come together because
So-
there's,
oh, Good to reference.
where's the building? What's the grade look like as it comes up to the building? So it's,
Okay, so I'm okay. I think I understand it now.
Okay,
So I can leave it like it is.
I mean, my team, the guys looking at it internally may come back and with a suggestion to clarify. So there may be somebody else that goes, oh no, please fix this. So it may look different, but it may or may not be better. So we'll see.
Well, we are talking about an erosion control plan here. Shouldn't that be drawn by the engineer?
That is
So-
currently not required.
Well, let's strike the word architectural and erosion control plan shall contain engineering drawings, etc.
Again, I think the architectural is partly to show the building relative to the grade coming up to it, perhaps.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to strike it, but I understand your point.
Just let it be.
Let it be, okay.
Keep the way it is. I agree with Kim.
all right. Another Ken comment. Ken, can you help us just word this? Because I agree. The comment is to add,
Oh, it's got
data
television,
cabling?
cable,
yeah,
and it's an antiquated term. I
right.
just wanted to know if we
Right.
wanted to get a little more current, like data cabling or network
Communications.
cabling or
Communications.
what?
Communications.
Communications
Okay,
cabling might be, just more up to date. We want to be 2000, 1980s.
yes, I agree with you 100%. I just wanted clarification on what term we wanted to use. So communications
I get
cable,
Communications cable.
okay. Perfect.
I would actually-
Okay,
And for that, Jen, I would actually, I don't know what they're calling it now, but I would look at like, the 811 utility locates. 'Cause I know
mhm.
the color's orange when they mark it, but I'm not sure what they call that category. That they would probably be on the edge of standard in terms of what that term would be.
I think on the cover of the boxes, it says communications. And it's orange. I got all kinds of pictures of them from all the different providers and job sites. I think I'll look at the pictures, but I think it's communications.
Yeah.
Or telecom, probably telecommunications, because it's phone and network typically.
Communication lines,
And they'll mark it with fiber if it's a fiber line.
communication cables.
Yeah, orange means communication, alarm or signal lines, cables or conduit. According to my
You
little
obviously
search here.
Googled the same thing I did. Scroll down and it says communication cables.
Yep, and then communication cables, exactly. Yep.
So where does my satellite dish fit in?
That's a,
Well,
That's
Is-
area.
There's no cables.
Are you gonna bury it?
Next to your house, it's separate, that's the underground piece.
All right, thank you for that comment. Gotta update this code. Okay, where am I? 47 is the next page. We're in the grading plan format. Okay, so your comment is not sure what the requirements from this statement are supposed to create. I'll just read the language really quickly. The grading plan shall show the existing and proposed shape of the earth and surfaced areas. The method of portrayal shall be well thought out and systemized, and then the following information shall be included in all grading plans. And then we go through a list of elevations, spot elevations, finished grades, top of curb. So what would your specific question be then, Ken?
What are you getting by adding well thought out
Yeah. good
and
question.
systematized?
You just deleted that.
Organized spaghetti as opposed to. No, see, I don't, literally, this is one of those sections where we did not mess with what was required, what was listed. It's like,
I mean, I can see somebody saying, okay, send this to the organized and systematized department, and have them organize and systematize it. They come back and say, what in the blank do you want? Because that doesn't tell me anything.
You know-
I delete the sentence.
I just delete it.
depending if it's a multi-sheet drawing set, the index is always nice and helpful. Pages, numbers are clearly labeled. That's always helpful. So I think that's what they're trying to get at when it's a multi-page drawing set.
Well,
I
do you need that sentence to say, hand it back to them and say, this is not organized enough, you need to go back and rework it?
maybe, I don't know. It's
I mean, does that sentence need to be there? Can you just look at them and say, we can't make heads or tails of this, this isn't gonna fly, you need to rework it?
well, where does it say I have,
tell you, it was well thought out already.
where does it say I have to be organized?
This is the only one I've seen in all this code. I'm just saying, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me.
Yeah, and we do have 12 specific criteria, so if we haven't covered it in those 12,
This isn't
Never.
specific enough for me to, I mean, does that mean put numbers on everything? Now it's
This section
systematized?
brings you joy, okay? How can you go wrong?
Well, I agree. Well, if I turn one into you, I'll argue with you on what systematized is.
Again, that's one of those things we did
It's
not
so
mess
kids.
with.
It doesn't hurt being in there to me, but it doesn't provide any value either. So you guys do what you want with it as far as the staff. I'm not gonna. take it.
The part that says shall be well thought, it's like you feel like you're patting somebody on the head. Just.
Sounds like staff.
Well, and is systematized even a word in this context?
You can keep it. Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't think it tells me what, if a customer,
Yeah.
I'm either gonna do it like I always do, because I do 50 of these a year, or
Yeah.
I'm new to this. And I'm gonna come to you and say, I think I can do everything, except I'm not sure what you want there.
Jen, what were you trying to say?
Oh, I just said systematized seems like a made up word, but
It does.
Well, it's been around since I think, what, 94, 97, whenever the ordinance was
I
done.
just had to make a comment. It was about time. I'd read too much without making one.
You know what I'm gonna suggest, Ken, Don, Larry, we allow staff to have that flexibility to look at things like that. We've gone through all this. They know how we think pretty much. Just clean it up and make it consistent. I mean,
Whatever you want, Karen.
I don't want to hear the excuse. That's what the old code says. If
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I underlined it and I'm putting a question mark next to it. And I'd be interested to hear what my primary end users have to say about it.
Ask them what they want. Say, we got this sentence that doesn't mean anything to the planning commission guys. And they said, put in what you guys want, but be specific enough that you get what you want.
The intent here is that when you get a plan, really, with the city people who see these a lot, they look at it and say, this doesn't look right. They want to have something to point to and say,
Yeah.
this wasn't well thought out. This wasn't well thought out. It's certainly not system.
I don't think it applies to a firm or a company that's got architects and engineers presenting plans to them. It's probably a couple that's building a house and they've pulled some plans together from a cousin architect and a couple other people or something, and it may not be well thought out.
But
We actually had to ask an engineer to label his cover sheet on a drawing set as the cover sheet. They had an inappropriate label on there and it conflicted with another page in the drawing set. And it's like, please just, well, but you know it's a cover sheet. It's like, just change the label. So we've had that,
cover sheet.
Trying to be cute.
yeah, no, so we've had to provide that type of feedback.
Okay.
All right, Jen, so I think we'll see what my end users have to say about a
Perfect.
possible update.
Okay.
And systematize is a word.
I just looked that up as well. All right. Okay, we're almost done, guys. I think we only have like three more comments. Where are we? 48, sorry. Need to get on the right page here. Looking at the review criteria, there's a comment to relabel, add a new subsection and relabel subsequently to add the soil erosion and sedimentation plan or erosion control plan and the grading plan shall meet the development standards found in chapter 3 development standards and referencing the sections that they're in. I think that is a suitable addition, referencing back to chapter 3 if everyone agrees.
When I read those again on chapter 3, a whole lot of those made a lot of good sense.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and as we review the grading plan, let's make sure that's included.
Yeah, no, and I'm good with that reference, absolutely.
Perfect. This is one that may require a little bit of discussion. Karen and I had decided to just reference the performance and maintenance guarantee standards in the ZDP section. So we're on item 4 here. We're going backwards a little, sorry. We're going into, let me get where we are. That's in that submittal requirements, erosion control plan, and grading plan. Then one of the submittal requirements is a performance and maintenance guarantee. The comment is suggest restating section 6.03 pound D ZDP here to offer clarification, modify according to address grading permits. So that performance and maintenance guarantee section in the ZDP is about a half a page long, I believe. We can go up to that if we want to. But Karen, I know you and I had decided to just reference that section in lieu of repeating the language. So let me go up to, where is that section? Performance and maintenance guarantee. So it's 3A through E.
This was one of those things where there was language and grading permits related to performance guarantees. And then in ZDPs, there was other language related to them a little bit. And the thinking was to consolidate it and clean it up in one place. That's why it got where it is. And I can't dial anything else up in my brain after that. Sorry.
But the performance guarantee is in the ZDP, not in.
It's in both places, slightly different in the current regs.
But when you're going through the process, where do you complete your performance guarantee? Where do you document your performance guarantee in the
It
ZDP?
depends.
Okay, that's not the answer I was hoping for. I was hoping you say it was one or the other, and then we'll just say note. Don't forget to include it in your ZDP, but it wouldn't be a requirement for your erosion control plan, for example. So to me, it strikes me as it's not actually a requirement for this step of the process, but it's worth noting, hey, don't forget to include it
It can be though, because a prime example of this is the downtown development for Tava House properties that you saw. But since they've been working on such an aggressive schedule, they were very much about, give me a grading permit, get me a grading permit. I gotta get started on this. I don't care if you guys aren't ready to issue a zoning development permit for my building or my subdivision. We gotta get moving. We need this. So we issued, partly through that subdivision development agreement, it acknowledges that we've done this, that we issued just this grading permit, a type A grading permit for them, and did require performance guarantee, since they were doing this fairly large site disturbance. And the whole point was protections, that if for some reason the project was abandoned, we had the financial money to go back and reestablish ground cover. So does it happen a lot?
So,
No,
so in
but
your,
it's a protection.
yeah, and I'm
for
not
community.
arguing, I'm just trying to reach that clarity. So in your example, the performance guarantee was not part of the ZDP.
It was part of
It was-
just a grading permit.
Yeah, so that's not really what it says as it's written right now.
They're adding that to the grading permit section
See-
from the zoning permit. You're like,
Okay, I'm just reading the black text, but. So what we're saying is a performance maintenance guarantee may be required.
Well, we already talked about that's badly written at the first part of it, that the applicant may be required to provide blah, blah, blah.
Unless may be required unless otherwise accounted for in the zone, an approved zoning development permit. Something like that.
So what is it you would like, back under grading, clarification about what?
See, normally that would really be covered under the ZDP, so it wouldn't be, to me, it wouldn't be required as part of this plan. But you gave me an instance where if it's not in the ZDP, well, then it would be required here. So it's a bit of an either or statement. So unfortunately, I think we have to use some either or kind of language. You know, may be required if not otherwise accounted for or whatever in the ZDP.
So,
Isn't 3A an either or right now? I'm just. Cause it says a ZDP or a grading permit, so isn't it covered?
well, and like I said, we've established we need to rework that paragraph, okay, that you're looking at, that 3A. So that needs to be reworded. Can we go back to the grading permit section, Jen? Where it references this. So what is it you would like to see in the grading permit? This spelled out separately here, or a better reference and clarification to that section? I mean, I guess that's kind of the bottom line question.
What I was getting at was, let's spell out what's required under that section right here, instead of referencing to it. And it doesn't have to reference the ZP. You can just go ahead and reference those guaranteed.
it's use a similar
So you
paragraph.
want duplicate language just located here.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't need to necessarily in that other well, you could leave the grading permit section up in the other one, but you could just be zoning
Yep.
development permit may require,
Yeah, no,
Performance
but you want duplicate.
same thing,
language
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
grading permit
Okay.
may require performance guarantee.
But in addition to that requirement may have already been satisfied by the ZDP, so.
You wouldn't get a separate grading permit if you got the ZDP already, right?
It depends. Though typically what happens is if the project is that big and that complicated, it says you need a grading permit, but if you've already done, we view it as part of the zoning development permit that you're putting this together. We just don't charge a separate fee for it. It does tie together, but and that may shift a little bit under our permitting system, but it's part of Woodland Park.
Right.
The projects, we've either got a site permit or a grading permit when we don't have enough detail for them to sign off on the full building permit. Which, I don't know if that'd be a ZDP in this case, but, so typically when we get the full permit, it includes the grading.
And that happens sometimes. I really don't like to do grading first or grading only. Sometimes it's necessary. The ones I really hate to do is the foundation only permit. Cause
Yeah.
they're not done with the rest of it, and I've had those go south where then you end up with a foundation.
Stonehenge.
Yeah. That might be what that is.
So I think Larry's suggestion to just put the language in here about the
Yeah.
okay.
performance guarantee,
Well,
just like
everybody
the other
agreed
one.
with that, so.
So let's move on. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do have a question on a grading permit. Does that include site utilities, like the stormwater lines, the sewer lines, main water,
No.
all the underground utilities on the site? Or how do they get that if they need to get that in as a grading time? That's specified by you guys when you give them the permit, if we ask for it, like as a,
I think it's,
That's-
and CJ may pipe up for me here, I don't know. That's an add-on because sometimes this is part of what does drive me crazy, and no wonder the development community is frustrated. Because there's grading permits and then there's infrastructure, sometimes infrastructure and grading go together, it's like, I really am searching for ways like, how do we put this together more cleanly and succinctly? So yeah, sometimes your grading does include the infrastructure. It's more broadly addressed early in here under the type A grading permits where I think it says subdivision lots, plural. So it really is, I've got a new development going in, I'm building roads, I'm inserting water and sewer lines. That falls into that category.
Yep.
CJ's nodding yes, so I didn't screw that up.
all right. I just didn't hear any reference to the site utilities as part of this, and it's one of the asks that I've been involved in before.
One of the what?
When I've asked for site permit or early permit for grading, it includes, we want site utilities typically. And so I just didn't see any reference to it. And I thought, well, if I came to you and I wanted to build something and it's like, okay, we got to start grading before a certain time of year. And you haven't signed off on my building permit yet, I'd say, can I get a site permit so we can do the grading and get the underground utilities underground before cold temperatures or something like that?
What we can do related to that, Ken, is under that back where we specify the 3 types of permits, that under that type A, it says subdivision development. We can add including associated utility
There you go.
installation.
Be good.
That works.
That answers the, I was gonna say, so what's the right answer? That's the answer.
I'm just saying, if I'm coming to the city and I want to build something, I'm thinking I need to get the site utilities in while I'm doing the grading. Does that permit cover it? If you said yes, say, okay, but I don't see that anywhere.
Yeah. So I think if we add that phrase
Yeah.
to that section.
Or if you say that's on this checkbox on this form and we add that or don't based on, whether we feel comfortable or not, then I'm like, okay, it's there somewhere.
It's towards the end of page 9, Jen.
There, thank you. I was just gonna ask you where you were referring. Page 9,
Yeah, right there, subdivision development,
yep,
including associated utility installation.
okay.
Or utility and infrastructure installation.
That'll cover it.
Yeah. Because what about
Okay.
roads? What about sidewalks?
Culverts.
Sure that's in the right place.
Where you're gonna put-
Okay,
Catch basins.
great. And just to clarify on that previous question of the performance guarantees, we did decide to repeat that language down here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The last comment is that Ken noticed that the existing wetlands are not mentioned in any of the items shown, may not apply to
So I
Woodland
thought
Farm.
we just ignored it. And then I read on
Mhm.
down and it references wetlands in another paragraph. So I thought it was odd that we left it out of the list of the things you wanted to see on a plan.
Right,
Oh, yeah, it's,
So it's
I would consider.
Significant vegetation and trees and canopy, but you didn't say anything about wetlands, and we always have to cover that on a drawing.
Yeah, I would
the cities
consider
and stuff.
that part of natural features that need to be described
Yep.
on a plan set.
Yep, that's fine.
But it wouldn't hurt to like throw that in back under wherever it is where it talks about either one of these permit types to make
Because
sure
in,
that's something
in
that's
review
delineated.
criteria, it does reference reviewing wetlands as one of the items.
Is it The only one we have is the golf course, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's even in the city where that exists,
Well,
but
I mean, it's, you can't do anything on it, that's
yeah.
There's-
But
restricted.
But I mean, if somebody owned the land next to it and came in with something, you'd want to see the wetlands
Yeah.
on the drawing for their
Like the
erosion
Pacific
control stuff.
Northwest, we don't have a lot of them, but it
Right.
wouldn't hurt to, with climate change and all, it wouldn't hurt to acknowledge.
We should put lunar landscape in there too.
Well, just in
What did you say about
acquisition-
landscape?
Nothing.
Lunar,
Oh, okay.
Just in government acquisitions, the mantra is always, don't evaluate what you didn't ask for and don't ask for what we're not going to evaluate. So the, what you require in the proposal and then what you evaluate need to sync up.
Yep,
Data,
perfect.
okay, Lee, question?
Yeah, 18.72.026 stop work order. It's actually tucked into the section of our current ordinance dealing with ZDPs, and we took all that, right? At least maybe I just missed it. Stop work
No.
order section. It didn't appear with ZDPs. The way it actually addresses this last subject. Whenever land disturbing activity is undertaken in violation of city zoning regulations, the city may order the work, and it starts, what happens?
We, Jen and I talked about that section and, it is likely gonna land in, an enforcement section. Enforcement of the code generally, broadly,
As a tool.
as a tool.
Okay, so what happens to this text then?
It goes under enforcement section.
Okay, so it's gonna be moved to what's the enforcement section?
I don't know.
I believe it's in chapter 1. Let me pull that up.
General provisions, yeah, I think we've talked about.
Because,
You're right.
because chapter 1 is outside of our purview, and so it's gonna move.
Well,
Oh.
it's chapter one we've already gone through.
Chapter 1 of this code.
Or chapter 1 of this code,
Yeah,
right, so it will, should we note on it? No. Somewhere in chapter 1, you'll reference that the language from 1872-026 would be.
Yeah. I think I heard that. You got a little quiet there.
18 point what, Lee, again? 1872,
18.72.026.
026.
It is interesting, it refers to somebody doing land disturbance activity that's in violation. Although it's in the section of ZDPs, which could be any other building as well or something. So if you're gonna put it in a general section, it shouldn't just. I don't know how it fits, because we're not really doing this all at once, but if it moves over, maybe it's land disturbing activities. Or other violation of the requirements of the ZDP or something.
Yeah, it potentially is quite broad because that's what happens. With short-term rentals, right after we were given the okay to go back to enforcing that ordinance. In that particular instance, we posted on the actual rental unit, a cease and desist kind of poster. So not, because they're not really working, unlike construction, if somebody's swinging a hammer, then you're in to stop work, but those types of tools will show up in enforcement is the thinking.
So I wanted to ask a scenario question about something I haven't kind of seen how it works here. Since we did the erosion and sediment control. So in other jurisdictions did a project and there's a construction stormwater permit. There's a fee associated with it. It's a 1 year. And it's for your management of your erosion control and things like that during the construction. If you're not completed with construction, you have to renew it. Then you have to cancel it when you're done with construction. You've established all your landscaping. And it's typical, it's an inspection. Somebody comes out and inspects your erosion control and sediment control. That's what the fees, I think, are to cover. And they write you up whether you're in compliance or not each month or whatever the frequency is of the visits. Is there something like that associated with this erosion control?
I'm not gonna be 100% technically accurate, but I'm gonna be pretty darn close with this explanation, and it's gonna be a little more conceptual. And I don't remember, like I said, the nuances, but there was legislation that happened related to exactly what you're talking about, Ken, the stormwater regulation and permitting. And there's a couple of distinct categories based on community size. I think it's community size. I don't know if it's land area or population or a combination of that. And depending upon which category you land in determines how you have to administer rules around that. Because if you're of a certain size, you're actually doing sampling of your stormwater from your detention facilities as part of that whole larger program. Where
Is that an
would-
established site or during construction?
Probably both.
Okay, because I know there's
Probably
other
both.
things for management of your stormwater ongoing, and it's typically a stormwater permit. I was just thinking just for planning and construction and,
No, I think it all intertwines. I think it all falls under those regulations.
okay.
Where Woodland Park falls into that, and I don't remember the terminology in terms of how they define it, whether it's a class 1, class 2, whatever those categories are. And I'm not sure because of our size, if we were required to and didn't, or our regs already met standards around some of that, or we didn't have to because of our size. I don't have enough history of where we are and how that fits. But depending upon what community you're working in, Ken, that's, my guess is that's part of what you're seeing.
Right, I've had some where we didn't actually have that official
Yeah.
document, but
And that
others they do.
it's probably about how they administer.
Just haven't done any in Colorado, so, all right.
Yeah, and in Colorado, it would depend upon the size community, because if you're working in like Aurora, they probably have a program similar to that. So. I just know enough to ask questions somewhere else. So anything else there, Jen?
Nope, that is the end of our comments and questions, at least the ones that were documented.
And Jared, did you have any other thoughts or concerns? Hopefully.
No, I'm kind of the newbie when it comes to all this kind of stuff, so I'm good. I've just been trying to save you guys from my coughing.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for attending. Yeah, thank you. And so that's what we had then. So next steps. Jen and I talked about this briefly, conceptually. I've run it past the city manager. I will finish firming it up with Jen a little bit more in terms of like where we're headed steps wise. But the thinking is, we've finished putting together a clean version of all of this, trying to make sure everything jives together for you. We distribute that to the working group, which is Board of Adjustment, Planning Commission, City Council. And I heard you loud and clear, that likely will get you some type of editable document, but we will still need you to load your comments into Conveyo. The reason is, as much as Jen graciously said, oh yeah, we can consolidate that manually. There was a cash register that went cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching in the back of my head. So we really don't have the budget for that type of manual labor compilation of that kind of thing. But if you use that Conveyo tool, it does that consolidation for us. But you'll have that other document where you can, the thinking is to be able to check the links and look at different sections. We can even get you a paper copy around some of those things. But the comments themselves will need to be logged into Conveyo. Then from there, we look at a work session to touch base on anything substantive. We will not grind through that like we have this whole document. It really will be substantive conversations. And then when we get done with that, that's what we send off to legal review. While it's under legal review, we'll likely do a work session with City Council just to update them on where we've been, what to expect, what you're gonna see, those kinds of things. And then after it comes out of legal, that's when we're looking at that community presentation and that review and comment period for those folks. or the community as a whole. At the close of that, looking at incorporating or addressing as appropriate comments from that. But we're hopeful that it's pretty tight even then with the comments we receive because, we've really tried not to touch those standards. I mean, clarifying 7,500 square feet, which side of that you're on is one thing, but, it's not like we changed it to 2 acres, So like I said, really trying to focus on its restructuring, clarifying process. So incorporating anything as appropriate out of that community review period, and then we're going into hearings. That's the thinking at this point in time. Stuff can always happen along the way, but that would be the targets.
So will that, when you talk about like public comment and hearings, will that be at our level first, or will that go straight to city council?
Yeah, the requirement to actually adopt this type of a code change when it comes to the zoning regulations, zoning subdivision, it does need to go through a planning commission first for you guys to make, to do your own hearing and make a recommendation. And then that's what then goes to city council for their final first reading of the ordinance and then adoption of something that's approved. That particular ordinance proper will include language to repeal, like chapter or what is, I can't remember if it's a title 17, 16, 17, 18 in its entirety and replace with this is how those ordinances look.
It might be useful as this process is going on to build a second document and just sort of start editing as we go along that says, what are the changes, substantive changes that we've made? Not where the rethink sections reworded, but where we moved the period of time from 1 year to 2 year, where we did, where there's specific things that we changed what was in there. And it may be a frighteningly long list. Hopefully it's controlled.
I don't think that's too bad. And Jen and I did talk about that, and I see that as a lot of what we're doing in that work session with city council while it's under legal
Yeah, well,
review.
that's, by the time that comes, we should have that, and this, the document thing would be in pretty good order, listing those things that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. And it, as much as we changed how residential dwelling types are referred to in the use table, it really was in the sake of cleaning up the language, and the label's a little different, but the intent behind it is still there.
Yeah, and so I'm not saying because the definition is different, say it's different. If it's the same result,
Yeah.
then that's fine.
So anyhow, but yeah, Jen and I did talk about needing to have that kind of a list and make that part of that briefing. And the thinking is that helps prime the pump a little bit in terms of like what's coming, what is being looked at. Doesn't hurt to reiterate the message, more than once.
As we've gone into year 3 now on this. And I've noticed some things that we have consistency and clarity. Things have changed our thought process. We need to, as you go through the earlier things that we worked on, feel very free to have the latitude to go ahead and make those changes, even though we didn't specify change this word to this out. But feel free to keep it consistent with where we're ending up. And speaking from the rest of our commission, we trust you to do that. We trust you to do that in the right way, an ethical way.
Yeah, no, we're very aware of trying to get that language consistent and clear, because right now that's part of what happens when somebody comes in with an ordinance change like natural healing medicine, because our code has at least 3 or 4 different thought processes around the systematization or organization or structure of the code. Those new ordinances, things that need to be added in, this one get tucked in over here, this one got tucked in over there, and it is very hard to administer and move through and work with stuff that yeah, it's just very challenging. And so when you do get that clean copy, despite our best efforts, I'm sure there will still be things that you guys are finding. You know, in terms of city planning director, staff, you know, we'll do our best to search and replace and scrub, but doesn't mean you guys won't still find some of that, which is helpful to the end product, you know, and having that much cleaner. But we'll do our best.
But as we find those things and you see our comments saying this is not consistent, you simply recognize that and say, okay, we don't need to sit here and talk about
Yeah.
each one of those.
That's why if we need that work session after that review of the clean one, we will go through and identify, you know, like this is substantive, this is a metric that needs to be looked at, and we will focus on those specific topics. Yeah, we're not gonna start at the beginning and work through. I'm sorry. I know you're having fun. Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, so that's where we are on that. With regard to the April 24th meeting, we've got one public hearing item scheduled for that night. I'm not 100% sure whether or not we would be rescheduling that hearing or not. So keep it on your calendar. I'll let you know as soon as possible. But I know the developer is pretty anxious to be in front of you all, but I'm not convinced that things will be at a place to be in front of you all. So that may get bumped out to the May 8th meeting. But probably end of next week before I'm able to let you know on that. So that's all I have.
Comments, questions? Meeting adjourned.
Have a great evening, everyone.